program.
Hindi,
Senate program.
hindi, total budget.
Total budget.
Teka.
A minute suspension, Mr. President. Medyo like, kalito-lito na.
Session is suspended.
Mr.
So
President,
I will withdraw my question, ma'am. I want the figure is the total expenditure amount, program amount. 6.352 trillion. Tama po ba yun?
6.352, yes.
Yes.
With the
so-
total budget,
Total
national
budget,
budget.
yes, sorry,
Oo.
sorry. Because that is now the program appropriations plus automatic appropriations.
Yes.
Just to be very clear, okay. Program plus automatic appropriation. And our total revenues would be
4.63. That's why about 1 point something is
so
actually loans.
the so-called
4.644 trillion national government
4.6
revenues. It's
Four-
374.5 billion higher than last year. So our gross borrowings are 1.6 trillion.
Hindi po. Ang ating total projected revenues for 2025 is 4.64 trillion? 4.63 trillion. 464, okay.
4644.
So if I subtract the total expenditure program, I subtract the projected revenues from that amount, our deficit is not in percentages but in amount 1.71 trillion pesos.
Yes, about that amount.
Expenditure and disbursement.
So there's a difference between
Projected deficit. This is just projected deficit.
What you mentioned.
Okay, what?
Deficit.
the deficit.
Sige, ma'am.
The deficit is 1.517 trillion.
May we know why is it why doesn't this follow the normal mathematics, Mr. President?
Difference between expenditure and disbursement. Disbursement is cash.
Okay, there's a difference between expenditures and disbursement. Disbursement is cash. So ito, expenditure pa lang yung sa budget. Appropriations.
Yes, yes. Everything is projected, Mr. President. Lahat ito projection for next year. So the authority to spend is 6.352 trillion pesos.
Yes.
As far as program plus automatic. Kasi
Pero ang
may standby pa. Alisin muna natin si standby yung unprogrammed. Okay. That's not yet spent.
Correct.
The projected revenues, wala pa rin yan. 4.64 trillion. So what's the projected deficit?
The maximum SARO.
the 6.352 sa maximum SARO. Hindi naman lahat yan. The cash that you will need, 6.182 trillion. Therefore,
1537.
the deficit is 1537.
537. So that's still we call that projected deficit?
Yes.
Projected deficit kasi hindi pa naman nangyayari lahat, no? So okay, so the projected deficit is 1.537 trillion pesos. Okay. What is our planned borrowing for 2025?
1.6 trillion.
Only-
above.
I'm
I'm
I
sorry.
don't think so.
5.5.
2.545 trillion.
Okay, so it looks like we will be borrowing 1 trillion for next year, more than our projected deficit. So may we know why?
Difference,
The difference,
principal on the principal, rollover.
For the
yeah, we're already paying the principal, so it's a rollover. This is just to repeat for the record what our secretary has confirmed.
So now we
Iba yung gross borrowing, iba yung net borrowing.
yes. So in effect, okay, we will be borrowing more than the projected deficit because we want to borrow money to pay for our principal debt payments. Tama. To the tune of 1 trillion that's the plan. For 2025, we will pay principal of our debt to the tune of 1 trillion pesos. Tama po ba yan? From the answer of our economic managers? Tama ba?
I don't know if that's all for towards the principal, but as mentioned, the total deficit is the total borrowings is 2.545 trillion.
Correct.
I don't know how much is the
1 point sa documents ko po, 1.2 trillion pesos actually is for principal. So,
That's correct.
okay.
so
So
1.2 trillion principal.
Gross borrowing,
Gross.
2545,
mm,
less amortization. It's in page 2 of the BDSM.
right. Okay, ganito, Madam Chair. In the President's budget message, President budget message, ano page ba to? Page, if you ask our staff to help us, look at page 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth paragraph, it goes like this. A total of 876.7 billion pesos or 13.8% of the proposed fiscal year 2025 national budget will go to debt burden for the servicing of government debt. This will cover net lending and interest payments on both local and foreign debt. And then can I now bring your attention to page 13, 1 to the third paragraph. The remaining 848 billion pesos or 13.4% of the proposed fiscal year 2025 national budget will go to creditors for domestic and foreign loan repayments. Okay. Now, if my question is about how much is the interest payment for our national debt in the 2025 budget, which figure should I look to? 848.
848.
Thank you for that. 848. So in effect, just to summarize everything about debt, for next year, we intend to pay 848 billion pesos as interest on our debt, and we intend to pay 1.2 trillion pesos as principal payments on our debts. So more than that makes it more than 2 trillion pesos na po mabayad natin. Apo. Ngayon, what would be our after the execution of the 2025 budget, what would be our projected level of national debt? After nagbayad, kasi nag-uutang, mag-uutang din, tapos magbabayad eh. So magkano po ang level niya?
17.3 trillion. From 15 trillion, 17.3.
Trillion pesos. Kasi I noticed yesterday, Mr. President, ang pinag-uusapan natin when we talk about debt, we talk about ratios, mga percentages. Pero how about the actual value of the debt? Isn't the best proof that the economy is doing well, the fact that we are able to ano ba tawag mo doon? to lower the level of the actual debt, the amount, not percentages?
Not really.
Not necessarily.
Don't
The
we?
economy will also be bigger by the end of 2025.
Right. I remember that the economy will also be bigger by the end of 2025. That's why this is one of the first that we discussed earlier. It's not a matter of just trying to pay down the debt, but encouraging growth. So the growth sectors that we need to invest in. Kasi minsan, kahit nga mababa yung debt, obligations, pero wala ka namang growth eventually, hindi ka rin naman makakabayad nung obligations.
But since the economic managers are right before us, ito na lang po yung question ko. Does this administration intend to pay down our debt?
We plan to make the economy grow faster than the debt.
Sige,
Yeah.
make it a record.
For the record, they plan to make the economy grow faster than the debt. So the
So
debt to
we,
GDP ratio will decrease.
so we're always back to the ratio, but you know the ratios mean siguro little, mean something siguro, but not really a big deal to the people. So
I guess
basta that was a very direct question, and that is the answer I got from the economic manager. So
Mr.
it's
President,
not,
I think it's also like this. There are many of us who are, let's say, straight employees and we don't have any businesses. We have, let's say, savings. We put money in the bank that sustains our family. Now, if you have a business, you take risks, you borrow, so that you can expand, you can have a bigger manufacturing plant. In a way, you hire more people. I mean, I'm sure, I'm just saying this for the record. You understand what I'm saying. But to be able to expand, you need to borrow. So you have a choice. You can stay put while your population is growing and you cannot create more jobs, but your debt is low. Or you can invest more in infrastructure and be able to sustain your growing population. So instead of just playing safe, most businessmen will expand, whereas ordinary citizens who are employees like us, well, I mean, some of you have businesses, but I'm just saying, you have your savings account, but you cannot really hire more people to benefit from your wealth.
okay, just facts, Mr. President, just for the record. So, under this administration, what was the level of the national debt at the start of this administration?
But here.
Pero ano ba yung tinarong mo sa
Okay. 2022. Okay.
In 2022,
Yes, 2022, at the start.
4 trillion.
the total debt was 13.4 trillion in 2022. Ito yung minana.
Hindi, sa start po, June 30 yan. More or less, June 30.
Don't have June 30, but sa 2022,
Ah,
13.4.
2020, January 1, 2022 or December 31, 2022? What is this?
Ano, June na to, June. June. June to.
June.
13.4.
June
June
1, June 1,
June 1,
June 1.
2022.
2, okay, 13.44 trillion.
Mm.
What is the plan of the economic managers by the end of this administration? What would be the projected national debt?
20.7 trillion.
20.7 trillion
Ano,
by
June,
June 2028.
June 2028. So I'm just
Pero yung debt to GDP ratio,
The
again,
economy in
Mm.
2022,
the economy in 2022, 22 trillion in 2022.
the economy in 2028 will be 37 trillion.
In 2028, it will be 37 trillion.
That's a projection also. Okay, so I think, Mr. President, okay, so I think we have done everything humanly possible for on the topic, Mr. President. Actually, marami pa, pero pwede na siguro.
Marami na yun.
Oo. Marami pa, pero
Alam namin
pwede
magtatrabaho.
pwede na siguro pag-usapan na lang, Mr. President, in our, ano dyan, kung how to interpret the President's budget.
Oh, tsaka
message.
may interpellation pa po
Sige pa,
tayo.
sige pa.
With
Sige, and then of
regard
course,
to
I'm not
meeting.
I'm not asking on the national ID yet because pagdating na sa NEDA, ang national ID, PSA. So we thank our chairperson, Mr. President, for her patience and of course also the patience of our resource persons. We have really tested our former colleague, Mr. President. Talagang he has shown us his patience with us, but we have learned a lot. We have learned a lot from our former colleague, and we want him to come back here, Mr. President, kasi we miss the wisdom and the guidance of our numbers and economics expert here in the Senate. So maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you
Mr.
for-
President, meron pa tayong DBM, DOF,
Correct.
NEDA.
Yes. Pero
Okay.
No, we need to call the agency
Yes.
first, and we have to end this first.
Okay.
thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Ano yan?
Majority Leader,
Mr. President, there being no other reservation for any interpellation, I move to close the period of interpellation on the general principles of House Bill number 10800. So move, Mr.
any
President.
objection? There being none, motion is approved. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we consider the budgets of the following: the Department of Budget and Management and its attached agencies, other budgetary support to government corporations, allocation to government units, including that of the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, special shares of LGUs in the proceeds of national taxes, local government support fund, formerly financial subsidy to LGUs, special shares of LGUs in the proceeds of fire code fees, barangay officials, death benefits, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, or the BARM, contingent fund, miscellaneous personal benefits fund, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund, or the Calamity Fund, pension and gratuity fund, and on program appropriations. Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Po, the chairperson of the Committee on Finance, and to interpolate the Honorable Minority Leader, indefatigable Minority Leader,
Mr.
Senator Congressman
President.
Intel.
May we ask that the DOF be called first? DOF muna.
Kayo naman sa haba ng binasa ni Francis. Biglang, session is suspended.
Tapos na to,
Mr. President, I move to amend my previous enumeration to include the Department of Finance.
There's no objection. Motion is approved.
Mr. President, following our tradition, considering the presence here of the Secretary of Finance, I move to consider that we tackle the budget of the Department of Finance and recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe, and to interpolate Senator Coco Pimentel.
Hearing no objection, consideration of the budget of the Department of Finance is now in order. Now, the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe, is recognized and to interpolate our Minority Leader, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel.
Before I proceed, Mr. President, I would like to acknowledge and give my warmest welcome again to the DOF family headed by our former colleague and pro temp Secretary Ralph Recto. And I would also like to apologize to our majority leader for not having caught on immediately to what he was reading. I was reviewing something at the time. So, Mr. President, it is my duty to present to the body the budget of the Department of Finance and its attached agencies and corporation. Based on the Senate Committee report, DOF's total agency budget for fiscal year 2025 amounts to 36,208,230,000. May I ask the gallery to please settle down before I proceed?
Yes, can we ask the OSAA to please maintain order in the plenary?
Again, the DOF's total agency budget for 2025 is 36,208,230,000, composed of 29,120,548,000 as new appropriations and 7,087,682,000 as automatic appropriations. With that, this representation is now ready to accept questions from our colleagues regarding the budget of the DOF and all its attached agencies.
Yes, can we recognize our Minority Leader to interpolate our Chair of the Committee on Finance?
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of our sponsor, I forgot to ask when I was asking about the government revenues, Mr. President. May I just continue with my fact finding for the government revenues projected at 4.64 trillion next year. How much would be coming from tax revenues, Mr. President?
From taxes, 4,332,000,000,000.
And then
603 million.
and then from the non-tax, Yeah.
311 billion.
Okay.
809 million.
kahapon po parang may comment ang ating Senate President na kahapon na increasing revenues but not creating new sources of revenue. So parang ibig sabihin basta no new taxes. So dito ako nakatingin sa non-tax revenues natin na 311 billion. Is that possible? May we ask the Secretary of Finance, is it possible to focus energy on increasing the non-tax revenue compared to increasing tax revenue?
One, you can tax revenue without new taxes in the, like going the economy.
There's a way of increasing tax revenues without increasing taxes by increasing growing the economy. Kasi syempre kung mas maraming bumibili, yung VAT mas tumataas.
Same
yung collections
percentage,
natin.
bigger pie, so
Oo.
bigger slice, yes.
Tax revenue,
On the non-tax revenue,
government-owned food corporations perform better,
if the GOCCs perform better,
more dividends.
more dividends come in.
Dividends from GOCCs is a non-tax revenue.
So dividends
yes.
from GOCCs, non-tax, as well as non-tax revenues, as well as the increase in economic activity.
Which is the biggest contributor to non-tax revenue? Which GOCC?
ESP,
BSP.
Bangko Sentral, Land Bank, PAGCOR,
Yes, thank you.
and PAGCOR are examples of the ones that have the biggest revenue remittances from non-taxes.
Okay, for our tax revenues, alam ko yung dalawang biggest sources natin would be BIR and BOC. May we get the figures, sir? BIR?
475.
BIR 3.33 trillion 232 billion
32, okay.
475 million.
For the customs,
Customs 1 billion
1.0.
1 trillion 64 billion.
Okay, sige. And then, meron bang third tax collecting agency na worthy of mentioning?
Other
na-
offices.
The balance would be collected by the others. Maliliit lang po. Apo. So, kumusta po ang trend? What's the trend in the BIR collections as well as the BOC
Actually,
collections?
we would like to congratulate the BIR. I believe they've surpassed their targets. They've met their obligations
For the year, they're
for the
on
year. For the year, they
BIR
are
is,
on
okay,
target.
2024 on target.
target.
Okay.
Total revenue is on target at 1.920 trillion. So that's 92.28% of the target 2.80 trillion. Eh hindi pa naman nagtatapos yung year. Eh.
So overall, for 2024, total revenue collection is on target. So parang yung projection natin nung last year makakamit. BIR is on target and I suppose BOC is on target?
Little below target.
Okay.
We surpassed the target for non-tax revenue.
They're a little bit below target, the BOC and the BIR. However, the year's not over. But then we surpassed non-tax revenue sources.
Okay.
So for
Yun
the,
na nga.
on target with the full target of 4,269.
Okay, so for the year, we are on target with our projection of 4,269 trillion.
So hindi natin masyado tuloy napapansin o mapapansin ang below target ni BIR and BOC because of the non-tax revenue. So what's happening, Mr. Secretary, Madam Chairperson, what's happening, what has happened in 2024 which made our GOCCs parang outperform their projected output?
We increased the dividend rate from 50 to 75%.
Okay. And what would be the effect on the GOCCs, Mr. President? Kung dati pala, the old rule, 50%. So they got to retain the 50%. Now they will retain only 25% of their earnings. So what would now be the expected effect on our GOCCs?
To perform better.
They're being pushed to perform better, Mr. President.
Perform better with less.
Not with less, because that's their income. They still are able to cover their expenses.
The reason for many for their being provide dividends also to the national government.
Their main
Yeah.
goal
Yeah.
is really to provide dividends for the government. So
Na-
now, a lot of them have already been in operation for many years. So we can expect an increase in their remittances.
Exception of a few, right?
Yes,
Yeah, with
I was asking Senator Risa Ontiveros, she mentioned yesterday that we have around 250 GOCCs. How many of them are expected to be earning for the government?
Only probably 10 really.
Ang not.
only about 10 out of the 250
Yeah,
GOCCs will give about the threshold of a billion and above. So 10 out of the 250.
No, yes, and then some of the 250 are not expected to earn from the government, not expected at all to earn for the government.
1 billion.
I'm sorry, to be corrected, instead of 10, 53 of the GOCCs will
17.
17 will give a billion and above.
Okay, thank you for that. And what would explain the BIR and the BOC failing to keep up with their targets, Madam Chairperson?
Number one,
Number one,
BSF.
the BSF.
Congress was not able to pass the tax laws on time.
Yeah, well, we weren't able to
Yeah.
pass the tax laws on time. So now we're paying. And so there's a shortfall in collections. But will we be able to meet our target?
Yes, but the BSF. That was all.
Okay, so let me now go to the President's message because the answer brought this idea to my mind. No? Page 9, last paragraph. Ang sabi po ng ating Presidente, we will also usher in key tax reforms that will revolutionize our tax system and ultimately enhance revenue, including 1, value-added tax on non-resident digital service providers. 2, excise tax on single-use plastics. 3, package 4 of the comprehensive tax reform program. 4, the rationalization of the mining fiscal regime. And number 5, the reform of the motor vehicles users charge. May we know among the 5, ilan na po ang na-achieve na? Number 1, si value-added tax on non-resident digital service providers. Okay. Thank you for that answer. So, I think these are all laws, Mr. President. So, sa atin pala ito naka-address. 4. So the President's budget message mentions 5 measures. So,
Congress can pass the remaining 4.
A message from our secretary.
Yes.
They will appreciate if we pass the remaining 4 bills that have to do with being able to generate more revenue for the government.
how much is that value-added tax on non-resident digital service providers projected to bring to government?
Roughly 80 billion in the next 4 years. So
80?
yeah, so about 20 billion per
20
year.
billion a year. So, Mr. President, ang BIR po ay bibigyan natin ng 16.8 billion pesos. Tama po ba? And then ang Bureau of Customs, 4 billion pesos. Tama po? More or less, rounded off?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, more or less. Committee report ba itong atin?
Yes, in the
yes.
NEP BOC 5.7 billion. Pero sa committee report,
Yes.
nilagay natin 9.2 billion. We increased it because of the Di ba yung mga incentives nila because of the surpassing their
4.0.
Oo, because of meron sa kanila na with the excess collection in 2022, I believe. Ngayon lang natin mabibigay sa kanila, di ba? Oo, kasi we needed guidelines for it.
Sa report sa akin po, 4.083 billion ang customs.
New appropriations.
Yes, and
Oo.
then ano po yung nabanggit po natin na
Hindi.
magiging 5 something?
Oo, kasi actually, dun sa NEP, Mr. President, 5.7 billion.
Oo.
Okay. Niretain niya ng GAB. Pero tayo, kasi meron silang request, meron silang incentive program for having surpassed their collections in target in 2022, no? 2021. Ngayon lang lumabas ito kasi the DOF, I think, asked from them certain guidelines before those incentives can be released. So yung difference ng 9.2 at 5.7, yun yung para sa mga incentives nila.
Based on law,
It's based on law, lateral attrition law passed by us.
Siguro, Mr. President, magpapaguide na lang kami sa LBRMO saan makita yun because we automatic, okay. Automatic, sige, can we mention the amount of automatic appropriations for the Bureau of Customs? Mga 1.7 billion siguro?
I'm sorry, Ms.
Automatic.
3.6.
Okay. There's a special provision from the DOF that rewards and incentives fund. In addition to the amounts appropriated herein, 3,609,000,000 pesos shall be used for the grant of rewards and incentives to the officials and employees of the Bureau of Customs for exceeding its fiscal year 2021 revenue target sourced from 15% of the collection of BOC in excess of its revenue targets pursuant to Section 4 of RA number 935, Attrition Act of 2005. The grant of rewards and incentives shall be subject to the provisions of the said law, its implementing rules, and release of funds shall be subject to the submission of a special budget request and other relevant budgetary requirements in accordance with applicable laws, rules, and regulations. So siguro kaya natagalan dahil may mga relevant documents pa na kailangan na certifications.
And that amount is to be handled by what agency?
The customs.
It's the commissioner who will decide the disbursements from that fund? Rewards, sabi, ang pagkaintindi ko po, reward.
Rewards. That's why
Yes, so,
there's a committee that will decide on
Yes.
how it's going to be spent. But I was asking also the commissioner if kasi 2021 pa to paano ngayon yung mga wala na doon na empleyado in 2021? Are they meron bang mga employees ba makakuha dito?
are these bonuses, bale? Bonuses? Kasi ang alam ko reward is in 4 months reward, but
Rewards.
for surpassing their target in
Ah.
2020.
reward, you also use the word reward. Okay, yes, I remember the law. May mga incentives tayo dyan. Okay. Yes, I remember the law. Meron tayong incentives for for both BIR and BOC, I think. So is there a similar entry for the BIR?
None yet.
Why next year there's a next year most likely meron si BIR?
No, I don't think
None yet.
there's law ba for the incentive?
Yeah.
There is.
So, yeah.
Sige,
There's no reward yet.
But, so hindi pa nasa-surpass yung target.
Wala pa.
Oo, wala pa kasing, hindi pa nasa-surpass yung target, so wala
Yes,
pang
okay.
reward
Thank you.
na pending.
Well, Mr. President, I do not want to wash our dirty linen in public, no, pero I just want to tell the two agencies na hanggang ngayon may natatanggap pa rin tayong mga reklamo siguro. Sometimes you can say na you cannot satisfy everybody, pero sometimes may meron din worrisome portion of the complaint, a part of the complaint. So
Mr.
I just want to
President,
inform the two agencies na meron pa rin, just continue na lang your siguro vigilance, internal vigilance ninyo, crack down on the misbehaving members of your agencies.
We are working on it.
actually, Mr. President, that's an age-old problem, but also I'm not saying it's a lot minimized now, but what I'm saying is the effort of the BIR now, meron silang e-filing system na marami nang nag-a-avail. In fact, I think ilang online. 90%. Yung mga personal. Okay. So the total filings now are electronic, 90% are electronically filing. Of course, if there are certain discrepancies, they can still be audited, no? But that lessens human intervention. Pero yun nga, marami pa rin, like a lot of businesses, of course, di ba? This is approach us because they still feel the I guess the pressure. Now for the Bureau of Customs, meron na yung single window. This is the first time. Okay. So now the Bureau of Customs actually has a program where they open their offices to stakeholders to be able to share their feedback with regards to how the Bureau of Customs is being run. And tsaka meron din.
We're starting with that. It's difficult to change the number of complaints from previous last year. From certain managers. Now,
Laki pa ng BOC capital.
Complaints sa inyo?
so, nababawasan yung
Well, supposedly, sa kanila, out of 700 complaints in the past, ngayon na bumababa na sa 400. Baka naman takot lang sa inyo.
But you move to the next step from Saturday. Where we go. And the other
Government agencies. So the complaints are not, were not addressed directly to them. This comes from mga action centers, yung mga 888 and presidential action line na 888.
So I have been informed that customs will enjoy a substantial 580% increase in capital outlay in the 2025 budget. May we know where the CO will be spent on?
Single ticket window, ano yun?
Customs.
Yeah, no, I know for one.
Tama po ba?
from last year, 900.
Okay,
PLGF na lang.
the 900, the 2025 budget of 700, the Bureau of Customs, an increase of 893.6 million. The year-on-year increase in the PS allocation is due to the higher number of field positions, which has risen from 3,500 to 3,700 in 2025. The increase in MOOE for 2025 compared to 2024 is primarily due to the higher allocation for subscription expenses, particularly for information and communications technology, subscriptions which are necessary to maintain and ensure the stability and performance of the BOC's ICT infrastructure. The capital outlay, the 2025 budget of 742.86 million for CO, almost 6 times the allocation for 2024, will cover the funding requirements for the construction of the new BOC building at Iloilo Commercial Port Complex, Phase 2, 48.70 million procurement of 17 motor vehicles, 57.2 million purchase of office equipment, 41.7 million acquisition of various ICT active equipment, 595.8 million for the BOC's regional data center district ports, structured cabling and infrastructure, and fraud analytics.
So thank you. Yung CO, okay. May building pala na gagawin sa Iloilo. Well, I'll just appeal to the two agencies, Mr. President, Madam Chair, that they should institutionalize parang a complaints desk or window kasi para ma-address po natin yung mga reklamo pa rin.
With
Pero,
indulgence,
hindi
with
ko naman-
indulgence of the
yes,
Minority
yes.
Leader, siguro I'd just like to ask, point out also, yung you're asking about the capital outlay, the construction, I had the chance to visit the Port of Manila last year for an event, and napansin ko po, Madam Chair, is that yung Port of Manila burned down. They're still holding office in the gymnasium right now. Probably that can be planned also in the next coming years kasi nandun pa rin ho sila. Nasa
Oh,
gymnasium
wala.
nag-o-office ang Port of Manila.
Oh,
Office.
is that BOC? Concern?
That's BOC.
Yes. Bakit wala po sila? When did the fire occur, Mr. President? Kailan ba yun? Kailan nasunugan yung sa Port of Manila?
2019.
Oh, you're not. Bakit nauna po yung Iloilo na request?
We will be requesting today.
Sige.
What you see is about 2.5 million.
So about 2.5 billion is needed for this.
Oh,
Yes.
So it was submitted to the NEP, for the NEP, but it was not included.
Okay.
So
Yes.
this is something that we
Yes.
can really look into.
Yes.
Anong mas priority niyo? Nabasa na o? Yung mga na-include na? O ito? Yung mga binigay na ng NEP o ito?
It's equally important.
Okay.
Pareho.
I was asking, Mr. President, what's more important? Maybe NEP, in the NEP, there might be an item that's not as important as this one, but they said it's equally important.
Ah. Sige. Hanapan na lang kung talagang if the chamber feels that it is that important, Mr. President. Sige, but ito na lang, parang purihin ko rin yung dalawa nating ahensya na although may natatanggap tayong reklamo, hindi ko naman masabing dumami ang reklamo.
Okay.
So, well, i-address lang po natin yung mga reklamo. And then, Mr. President, talking about the Bureau of Local Government Finance, I hope, may I know the mandate of this office, Mr. President?
Yeah. Okay. Essentially, it exercises administration, supervision. Yeah.
Essentially, the Bureau of Local Government Finance, BLGF, is assigned to assist in formulating and implementing local government revenue administration and fund management policies and exercise administrative and technical supervision over local treasury and assessment operations, among others. Yun nga sinasabi natin na binabantayan, hindi pwedeng more than 20% of their revenue yung utang nila, yung mga ganun fiscal responsibilities.
Yes. So yun lang, reminder na lang po sa BLGF na to be also be proactive, vigilant, and then guide our LGUs na hindi po sila mabaon sa utang. Kasi ang buong mundo ngayon, well, I don't know if my talk with the Secretary of Finance was confidential, hindi lounge, but ang buong mundo ngayon, parang nababaon na sa utang. Kaya nga ayaw natin maranasan din ng ating mga LGUs po yan na they will find it their debt levels to be unmanageable or uncontrollable. May I just know from the experience of the BLGF in analyzing the financial statements of our LGUs, ang utang ba ng ating LGU ay all peso-denominated loans? All.
All. And in fact, meron pa nga silang surplus yung local government.
Yes, pero basically ano yun, because of Metro Manila, I think Metro Manila.
Yes, and mostly, correct.
So with that, Mr. President, I will just wish the Department of Finance family all the best and all the luck in the world, and you are under good hands, Mr. President. Malaking tiwala natin kay Secretary Recto. He's a visionary, and he holds his beliefs strongly. Talagang napag-aralan na po niya lahat yan. It's not necessary that we all agree with his siguro ano ba tawag mo doon, solutions to our problems or his vision, but what is important is he has basis and he has studies to back up his conclusions, Mr. President. Yan naman ang importante sa lahat. So customs and BIR siguro par for the course ng inyong ng inyong ahensya talaga merong magrereklamo, but please pay attention to all of the complaints, treat them seriously, and keep on improving. Keep on improving the delivery of your services, and then also the level of honesty among your people, among your employees in how they deal with the public, with the stakeholders. So I wish you all the best. Good luck, and thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, everybody.
President,
Thank you to our minority leader.
Mr. President, next to interpellate is none other than the chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means, the Honorable Sherwin Gatchalian.
The chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, Senator Gatchalian, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I just have a few items, and this is in continuation of some of the topics that a good minority leader propounded earlier. Actually, there's another tax measure that we enacted, Mr. President, that is not on the list that our good minority leader mentioned, and that's the Real Property Valuation Reform Act. It might not contribute directly to national coffers, but it will improve the financial capacity of the local government units. And the intention there is to make our local government units financially independent, hopefully, so that they will not request numerous subsidies from the national government. So I'll focus on that. And the good minority leader also opened up the topic of BLGF, because BLGF is tasked to implement the RP Vara law. So may I just ask the good sponsor on the status of the implementation of the RP Vara law? Is that law, where are we in terms of the implementation of that law? And what are the challenges in terms of implementing that law? Because admittedly, that's a sweeping reform on how our local governments will value property and as well as collect taxes from those property, Mr. President.
Well, the exploratory talks with the World Bank was October 2024, but the
IRR next week.
the IRR will be ready by next week.
Oh, okay. That's congratulations in advance to the Department of Finance for releasing the IRR in the next few weeks. And Mr. President, a good sponsor, in the law, it also requires the creation of the Real Property Valuation Service, and this is a key office in the BLGF in order to fully operationalize this law, Mr. President. And in fact, this representation requested an additional budget of 89 million to operationalize this. Unfortunately, and I understand a good sponsor because budget is really tight, this was not